0 of all time when it comes to all international events. Europe, they love their ties.
Backs against the wall, you need the stats to prop you up. Anything to get you into some positivity. And the same is true for G2. Like the analyst desk was saying, it was by no means a one-sided match. They controlled the pace of a lot of the previous matchup against Africa. But you got to pick yourselves up thick and fast. And Flash Wolves have actually chosen the blue side for this game, a reward, I believe, for their shorter game time. And thus, let's wait and see what actually falls to first pick, because that's, of course, going to be the big reward. Recently for Flash Wolves, the Akali has been very contested.
You would imagine that Alistar is very high on the priority when it comes to either picking or banning away. We know that both Sword Art and Wadid would happily grab that champion if it is available, and I believe that it is Sword Art's by far best champion. It really fits into the playstyle that Flash Wolves love to utilize.
But the question is, do you ban one and then not be surprised if there's a counter ban, or do you leave both open and then have to contend with the other? Seems like Flash Wolves are going to blink first. They ban away the Akali. And I agree with you. If Alistar's up, it's going to be picked. However, G2 have been happy with these Tahm Kench drafts that can be pretty capable into it.
They have an interesting Akali ban there for Flash Wolves joining Nocturne and Camille, but G2, I think, have to decide kind of between Alistar or Urgot. They already played against Alistar too soon. Kind of gave them the hands with it, but it will be a Sipper ban here. G2 going to leave kind of everything up here and just throw another Marksman ban into the mix.
They are on the red side, so they will be able to effectively get themselves 2 strong picks, but I feel like the easiest pickup here for Flash was, it's not going to be the Alistar. So now G2, they can grab that one for themselves, and they will likely grab the comfort pick in the top lane for Wonder.
And it's a bit of a curious choice for me because Sion is up, and you could just take a tank into Urgot, but they're not willing to roll the dice. They're going to take the Urgot for themselves. They can take the Tahm Kench side of the matchup, but definitely, based on the history of that Alistar pick, always been a big one for Sword Art. You're surprised to see it. I'm very interested to see what Betty plays next to the Tahm Kench. The Varus is open and would be a power pick.
Yeah, Varus and Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa's kind of the direction I'm looking at for G2 Esports. We heard on the analyst desk that all of the games today have been going extremely late and show for so much power in the late game fights we just saw in the Africa matchup against G2. But if Flash Wolves want that lane dominance, they can preemptively grab that Varus and guarantee themselves a strong 2v2.
Well, there is the Tahm Kench as expected there for Sword Art, so opposite matchup this time for Wadid. And Mujin has looked pretty good on the aggressive junglers. I think Talia has been his best looking pick so far in the tournament. So they will consider it and they will lock it in.
Oh,
Heimer's open.
We forgot about it. Oh no.
I didn't forget because I was watching it drop. Like, they already let it drop through. Maybe they don't want to play it and then they insta-log it. So I'm wrong. Heimerdinger.
It's the tiebreaker game. G2, they go back to comfort. Wonder on Aatrox, Wadid on Alistar, and Hyanan on his undefeated Heimerdinger.
And if I've learned anything, if your back's against the wall, it doesn't matter if you have an undefeated champion if you're eliminated from the tournament. You got to put it out there. You got to put it on the world stage. I hope Tarzan's listening. That 12-0 Trundle didn't get them a win, didn't get them to Worlds, but the Heimerdinger, it warps the game in such a massive way, and the mastery over it, we look over it, G2 do not.
Well, there's a Jhin ban, so G2 going to continue throwing a little bit of pressure down towards Betty, and LeBlanc also banned by Flash Wolves.
You would imagine that Flash Wolves would look to take something like the Aurelia off the board. G2 Esports, they could look for a bit of AD damage in the middle lane. It's a comfort pick for Perks, and it's one of the strongest mid laners in the current meta, so to me it would make sense that Flash Wolves try and take that one away.
Can think of another AD champion that Perks is pretty good at? We'll see. It's 10 seconds left for Flash Wolves.
I don't know if we can have that much excitement in this tiebreaker game if a Yasuo came out. Ban's going to be to the Xin Zhao.
Oh, they left it open.
Shut down Jankos, and you're right. That does mean Hyanan just going to snap it up for Perks.
Look at the smile on his face. G2 very happy with how the draft is playing out right now. They do have the engage with the Alistar. They have damage. They have side lane threat. They can play with the 1-3-1. The Heimerdinger can hold on to the mid lane matchup as well. I feel like G2 are very comfortable with what they've got themselves.
They feel like they have the bonanza, unless we see Flash Wolves show us something different, as this would be different.
Yes,
We're going Mordekaiser bot lane here to try to deal with the Heimerdinger. That's going to be really interesting. Double bruiser lane here, most likely. Outside chances of Mordekaiser mid lane. I know that was played earlier in the year in the LMS, so we'll wait and see just to get the full information, but very likely to be one of these off-tank kind of bruiser mages in the bot lane, and the Rise to come through for Maple.
Yeah, looks like Rise indeed will be the selection there for Flash Wolves.
So Betty already playing a couple of games on that Mordekaiser. I thought we were past the Mordekaiser meta, Vedius, but
So did I.
Heimerdinger's brought him back. This is a hard lane to conceptualize when you just think about it in simple terms.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we know about Mordekaiser is that he does push a lot. That's one of his big strengths. And also, when he's in that duo, he actually still gets the full experience as well, which is why he is so valuable down in the 2 versus 2. But against a Heimerdinger and an Alistar, I'll be honest, gents, this is not a matchup I'm familiar with. So it's going to be a learning experience for me.
I think for everyone at this point, but these are the lock-ins for these teams, as you can see. Only 3 seconds left for any swaps, and I'm pretty sure we're not getting any. Last pick, Dragster for Jankos, I like as well. It's very comfortable, it's very stable champion. He certainly needs that after the loss they just suffered.
Now, my only concern for the side of Flash Wolves is that Hanabi, throughout this tournament, has found most consistency when he puts himself on Sion. When he's forced into these carry v carry matchups, he can often fall behind. And when Wonder gets his hand on this big, powerful Aatrox pick, you would imagine that he'll look to pressure and force Hanabi down during the laning phase. And will he be able to have the same team fight value that he's had so much on that side?
And even though this Worlds indicated that consistently it's been the Urgot winning the Aatrox matchup, we've definitely had counterpoints. There definitely is some skill involvement here. So I'm very excited to see which way the lane goes and whether the junglers are going to be largely about influencing top lane or trying to salvage a Heimerdinger situation. I feel like the first early levels here will be so intriguing to watch on the bot lane.
Have to agree, but we'll find out in just a moment. One of these teams is playing their last game at Worlds here. The second slot in this group is on the line. Now, what you want it to be, given that both these teams at different points would have an opportunity to play for first. But you don't come to this tournament to go home early. At this point, you'll take it. Only one of these 2 teams can advance. Will it be the Flash Wolves, who again had a promising start but failed on, or G2, have been hot or cold kind of all year long, as everything culminates in a lot of comfort for both these sides, and one final game and a 4-man invade in bot lane.
And it's probably going to be a game about bot lane one way or the other. CG2 coming in 4-man strong, just using the turret building to give information about what's going on in the brush. Whoever gets the minion wave first can be oh so important in Mordekaiser lanes. If you look at this bot lane, summoners, runes, etc., we do have the Exhaust Ignite summoners for a potential all-in. They also have Glacial Augment Tahm Kench for chase down. Can be very useful early game, pre-level 6, chasing onto the Alistar, and Guardian for a bit of extra health onto the Tahm Kench. Over in Korea, actually KT Rolster, surprisingly, one of the best teams running around with the Mordekaiser. That was Mord Orn, the Bruise Bros, as we like to call it. We got some pseudo Bruise Bros here, and we have a late invade by Flash Wolves.
I feel like Ghostpora may have seen some people, but not entirely sure, as Flash was also sticking 4 men together for this late invade, as you mentioned. So G2 will stick their duel lane early in the bot side, but Flash Wolves will look to steal away a buff. Jankos already over to the other side of the enemy jungle, though.
Seems like they're splitting the map here. Maybe they're happy with vertical jungling because it means there's no backup for Heimerdinger and Alistar. If there ends up being some bot lane plays, at worst, it will give Kjarnan and Wadid some pause, knowing that for now at least, Jankos is going to be jungling almost exclusively on the top side.
But it will give Kjarnan and Wadid early priority on the wave, and you can see the push is in full effect from this Heimerdinger. I'm excited to see how well Betty and Solak will be able to hold their own in this lane, and as you identified, Papa Smithy, this is a big bruiser bot lane, and their ability to stick to the targets is what I think is so strong, especially once Betty completes a couple of items. You imagine that a Rylai's is going to come through somewhere later on in the draft, but I think the focus for Kjarnan is just farm, farm, farm. He's very reliant on getting things like the Lost Chapter before he really commits to any big trade.
Even the skill order can be a little bit all over the place for Mordekaiser. W max was the most often, but the cone, the E, was also can be taken just to try to push the turrets and try to poke them from range, because once level 6 comes around, 2 melee champions have no fun at all when that evolved turret comes down and makes life a bit of a hell.
Can certainly be tough, as we did see Perks and Maple trading a little bit there. Good stun there from Kjarnan, though. Does get the laser charge up. Wadid kicks Sword Art out of the way. Pulverizes Betty for a bit of extra trade damage, and Sword Art eats a turret, and it's going to spit it out towards Wadid.
Ideally, Wadid just wants to headbutt Betty every time he tries to approach the wave with his W on to stop him building up any of his passive, of the shielding here, as you see, just time and time again, because keeping up full shield is so important for Betty to just be able to ignore all the annoying chip damage from the turrets.
Yeah, the wave clear from Betty is actually pretty significant, and again, we talked about the shared experience not affecting Betty. He's now hit that level 3 mark, and he has control of the wave as Kjarnan has no turrets left, so Mordekaiser so far feeling pretty comfortable in these early levels, but also want to keep our eyes on the junglers as well. You talked a little bit about it, Papa Smithy, the fact that G2, they had to go up towards the top side, given that their blue was invaded upon. Jankos is actually making his way down towards the bot side of the map, and right now, very little vision has been invested from Flash Wolves to protect this pushing Mordekaiser.
And also, they're going to need some jungle help, because if Wooded goes in, he might not get out. And speaking of Wooded...
Yep, does get a good flash double pop. Going to kick one back at Sorta. They're trying to grab, but he does flash out of the way. Jankos with a double belly bop. He's going to get two, but Sorta with it about is able to save Betty.
Able to get away there. They expend the flash to make it happen, which could be the sort of thing Tahm Kench can prey upon. They believe Talia's bot side. Good read by G2, so they don't go any further, but no kill can be picked up by the side of G2's bot lane.
They get a couple of summoner spells, though. The flash is gone from Sword Art. Betty has to use his exhaust, or did trace his flash to set up that play initially, but I like the proactivity from Jankos. We heard from Deficio. Is this the kind of player that can make the mental reset happen already? In this early game, he's trying to play around the duo that won their first game at Worlds.
G2 letting their solo lane stay pretty stable, as you can see. Wonder and Hanabi has been pretty even on CS. Hanabi just trying to get as many shots as he can. Wonder doing a nice job getting the lockdown, but slight level lead right now for Hanabi means that Wonder can't really do too much more after using all his cooldowns, but he's going to go back, get another knock up here. Does feel like it's kind of a losing battle versus Urgot, because he always seems to get more health back.
One of the advantages that Wonder has is he saw the jungler of Mujin down towards the bot side of the map, and the thing about this matchup is many pros will say that for the Aatrox to be able to win out, he needs to use his abilities aggressively, and you can't do that if the jungler is obviously playing around the top side of the map. So having that extra information allows him to play safe as we see more skirmishing down bot.
Another good stun by Kyanan, actually going to keep going for it. Ready, available to be devoured by Sword Art, but Kyanan going to keep them at bay with his turrets.
Touch being up so important, otherwise Sword Art might go aggressive, and the Ignite is still up on his side. I think you got the right read there, Red Vedius on the top side. For now, at least, Wonder is able to manalessly trade, not worry about the enemy jungler, and overall just being able to out-resource Hanabi. But as the lane goes on and some shops come in, maybe the texture of the lane will morph a bit.
Speaking of, not too sure exactly what's going on in bot lane, but it does feel like Mordekaiser was able to, again, using that experience, uniqueness in the bot lane, and also just some generally good pushing power, is at least keeping them back toward their turret, although the CS is staying even. Perkz also dancing around, looks for a quick stun onto Maple, but does not grab it. But again, gets out safely without taking too much in the trade.
Imagine he's a couple of minions away from level 6, which is why he made that play. And yes, Discuss got the ping as we mention it. Perkz happy to bide his time, has the Ignite in this lane, no cleanse coming through. Very much focused on the solo kill. It's one way to lead your team from the front, and it's the way that Perkz always seems to try to lead G2.
Yeah, he was a big carry earlier in the day. His Akali was why they were able to get that comeback win against PvB. His Lissandra not quite as impactful in their earlier game against the Flash Wolves, but now that he is back on a carry, I feel like that he's back in his wheelhouse. He's in a position to lead his team to the quarterfinals for the first time in G2 esports history. But there is still a very angry Flash Wolf standing in their way as we see a bit of jungle attention down towards the bot side.
See what can get done here by Mujin. Jankos also in the area near the blue buff. But Talia just going to walk in and check it. Again, pushing bot lane. Gives him a lot of freedom. Vanguard's edge onto Maple. Perkz apparently just showing off.
We'll call it a zoning ultimate
Yeah,
there.
we'll do that.
Just wanted to see, just try. Realized he was under turret, so wasn't going to make any plays. It's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't with Mujin in particular, because you always want to come bot lane either to gank or poke away the turrets. Speaking of it, which...
Again, when he kicks away Betty with that shed shield on. Perkz again going in onto Maple, but he already used his ulti. Good amount of damage, both running low on mana as well, so Perkz just trying to be a nuisance.
Maple doing pretty well in the 1v1 though. Even after Perkz is playing as aggressively as he is, he stayed even in farm, and he's able to pick up his tier as well. He did use his TP earlier on in the matchup, but now Jankos is actually hanging around. He's just getting a bit of vision towards the bot side, but Mujin is here to help with the wave clear as well.
No mana, so just a recall timing for Maple. That's going to be something Perkz can take advantage in to get a good recall of his own. Might be Hexdrink or Merc Treads the first purchase. Top lane is completely even, so 8 minutes in, no closer to knowing if it'll be G2 or Flash Wolves joining Aatrox, joining a Freak of Freaks. It's been a long day already. already
Aatrox.
in the next round.
And what a crazy day it has been as well, because when you kind of look at how things have played out, G2, for all intents and purposes, should have been knocked out of this group. And if it wasn't for PVD bringing in their sub-jungler, finding the upset win against Flash Wolves and giving G2 this other opportunity, it would be Flash Wolves locking in that quarterfinal.
And I think we actually have to talk about the fact that the Drake did not go to the side of the Mordekaiser team. When we had that Mordekaiser meta earlier in the season, we understood that if the Mordekaiser team was able to monopolize Drake, get the Ghost Spirit down, suddenly those turrets quiver in fear. Just a single breath from the Drake, you take the turret and you rotate from there. If you lose the Mordekaiser Ghost, if you can't pick up any of the Drakes, it does slow down the advance and makes Flash Wolves much more accountable in the 2v2.
And I will say that I like that G2 are at least drawing people down to the bot sides. It's giving Perks more agency to play aggressive, and this is Xianring Wadid's wheelhouse. Just play on the bot side, try not to die, and absorb whatever pressure comes your way. Jankos, though, also been pretty active alongside Mugen, but First Blood still available for the taking as Hanabi is roaming, and this might even be a lane swap here. Ooh. Seen this once already from Flash Wolves.
So he sees a Negatron cloak purchase come out of Perks, might be a delayed Wits End later, and they just say, okay, that's, you know, the better part of 750 gold spent on magic resist. That's lane swap it. Speaking of lane swaps though, Perks and Jankos are looking for a gank up top. Maple looking like a tasty target.
This is apparently the solution. You lane swap with me, we dive you into the tower. Well done to Pop. Jankos with the belly bump. Vanguard's edge. Whee! And Perks surfs in for First Blood.
Gotta love it when a plan comes together. Attempt made by Flash Wolves, but that little caveat of there being a roam opportunity from Perks allows them to pick up the First Blood, and no answering kills available for Flash Wolves.
But now Mugen heads towards the bot side of the map. Mordekaiser, another champion that's really great at setting up these dives. And now with 3 members towards the bot side and no response from the G2 top half of the map, Flash Wolves will be able to zone Hyanan and Wadid away from a full wave of farm.
Nice job there, but Hyanan actually just picked up one with a grenade, so barely able to clip one as we'll watch this one again. Despite being seen in vision, Maple, not much he can do here.
I don't believe he saw it, given that he actually walked forward for another CS, but by the moment it was fully revealed, there was only going to be one result. Perks picks up the kill, which will definitely accelerate his build. Flash Wolves are feeling so pressured around the bot side, but nice little pathing for a counter gank by Jankos. Forces Mugen out and means no change in the 2v2.
So a slight early game goal lead going in favor of G2. G2 are going to continue with the standard matchups that they've been given now, with Hanabi now playing up against Perks. That hasn't changed his aggressive tendencies. And interestingly, Jankos is actually just investing everything towards the bot side of the map. Mugen is still here, and Jankos needs to respect that.
So I tried for a flash play, but the proactive flash there and the body slam is going to be easy enough to announce it. That seems like a nervous play by Sword. He's trying to play and make, he's trying to take advantage of the 3-hit passive, but doesn't find anything.
And good result by Jankos to just know, I'm out of here. Don't want anything bad to potentially happen. So let's get a summoner out of Sword Art as a result. As it looks like the dual lanes will be resetting in just a moment, as Xianring did push that last wave in.
And I think that when we kind of look at the compositions as a whole, I think it's fair to say that both sides have the options to play the 1-3-1 or 1-4 style of setup, but as well, both have strong team fighting capabilities. And you think about Heimerdinger and Mordekaiser in a team fight, the surprising amount of tankiness that a Mordekaiser can bring, and the amount of self-sustain that he has with things like the Gunblade completed, versus the amount of turret damage that a Heimerdinger can bring, along with the amount of AoE CC that can shift the course of a fight.
And the issue I see for Flash Wolves moving forward is that if G2 can keep up their early game lead, can grow it, get a few thousand gold ahead, and stick a vision advantage, walking into the turrets, or whether it's 3 of them or the upgraded turret, as this very short-range team, they're basically melee all the way through, no true ranged auto attacker, is going to be almost impossible. Yes, Mordekaiser in the lane, and especially if he gets the Drake Spirit, can push through the lane and trivialize Heimerdinger's impact. But as the game goes on, it's going to be trickier as top side.
1v1 here, starting off, TP in from G2, going to make it an unfair fight. Perks does not want to get himself executed, but he's looking for the solo kill, able to grab it. Didn't even need the TP in his bot side. Still some action brewing. Mugen here, ready with the ulti, but does not pull the trigger.
Beautiful stuff there from Perks as he finds himself a solo kill. Hanabi is struggling right now in this lane. We talked about how he would be able to perform on the Urgot, and right now things are not looking good in the early game.
If you opt into the skill matchups in situations like this, you look a bit silly. That was against the Negatron cloak, now Wits End of the Aurelia. Output Prime, no counter kill available. The rich get richer when it comes to Perks, and for Hanabi, He's just left trying to pick up the pieces.
And you mentioned it, that dodge of the ultimate from Perks is really what shifted the fight in his favor, because if that lands, Hanabi can feel much more confident in committing to the fight, knowing that if he can just get Perks to that benchmark, that is a guaranteed kill, but he uses his Q eloquently, and he walks away with a solo.
And here's G2 transferring some of that pressure that Perks has generated here to the bottom side of the map. Wadid actually going to start the dive up, pops Unbreakable Will. Here comes the dive. Wunder down here as well, looking for Betty, who's going to flash away. Swordart taking a little too much damage, but Hanabi is here. Unfortunately for Betty, he is not, as Wunder does finish off that kill.
Bit of a cleanup crew here for G2. They can't get a second kill just yet.
Swordart in the rush, but they can't get him in time as he actually Abyssal Voyages out towards G2's turrets. Wadid wants it. Flash, auto blast cone. Swordart's booking it in towards the base as fast as his little legs will go.
Wadid has bloodlust in his eyes. He's going after Swordart. He does have the boots of mobility. I don't know if he can catch up, though.
I don't think so. I think Swordart has successfully executed, indeed has done so. Wadid just celebrates by dinging the cowbell.
Gotta give him the cowbell when scenarios like that. G2 went for the turret. I assume they would just use the ult to try to represent turret damage. I often see Hyanan just drop the ultimate and see how the enemy reacts, but they go for the full-on dive because Wunder is coming down, as we can see. The play starts off innocently enough, but the moment that Wunder is able to walk down, Wadid starts to engage, and while they don't get the maximum, it's another positive play by G2.
It certainly is, and they're even able to get the teleport out from the Urgot as well, and what a great casket from Jankos. His early game has been sublime, finding a lot of good opportunities, been involved in a lot of the early kills, and things are starting to devolve for Flash Rolls in the early game. This Aurelia Perks in a side lane is extremely strong with a fully completed item and the team off the back of that. Wunder is picking up early kills, and up against Hanabi, it feels like that he's the one with the pressure advantage in Flash Rolls. Now with the Rift Tower looking to finally get some control back on the map.
And while usually we focus on the Rift Tower taking a turret, I want to see them find a way to get this Infernal Drake and get that first Ghost out of the Mordekaisers. Might be getting pincered here.
Fight brewing. Maple barely able to flash out of the body slam from Jankos, who did expend the flash as well. But still, that ever-important Drake is available for both these teams. G2 do want to try and fight for it. Shane's latch, but only hit Hanabi, who's pretty tanky at this stage of the game.
We see that Hyanan is still pushing out bot. Perks will ideally like to push this mid lane out, but Rise versus Aurelia, you've got to respect the range disadvantage that you're at, meaning that Flash Wolves will be able to move back through the river, try and reclaim some vision control before the Drake kicks off.
This is probably only possible because Heimerdinger is showing. Obviously, if he was in the river, he'd be setting up a turret line that Flash Wolves are not set up to walk through. They're giving up and ceding control around the Drake. Let's see if they can actually find an angle of approach, because for now, this seems like G2's to pick up.
Yeah, Wadid is trying to play defense, but the Drake will go down more than fast enough. As G2 do pick up their second Drake of the game, and again, deny it from the Mord.
And they're showing a lot of control, but mid.
Yep, looking for it here. Perks does get the disarm. Vanguard's edge already there, and Wunder just there onlooking, does get an assist, but Perks basically did that himself.
It's looking too easy to try to take down this Urgot who's getting rotated on, despite being one of the most contested picks in the entirety of Worlds. Maple, in the meantime, picks up some farm, but to what end?
And you can see that Perks really wants this. For the last 2 years, G2 have failed to qualify out of the groups, often being considered one of the favorites to make it into the quarterfinals. But with a new roster this year, with only Perks remaining in this quarterfinal matchup, he sits on a 3-0-0 Aurelia against the Flash Wolves, and G2 as a team are looking for more.
He's the franchise player, and right now he is playing like it, as G2 will actually get themselves the trade-in turret this Hyanan puts the final candy cane on that one. Flash Wolves did get the extra gold, but G2 are actually up 3,000 gold thanks to those kills. And of course, they have the 2 Drakes that are not reflected in the gold lead either.
It feels like everything comes together when Hyanan gets to lock in the Heimerdinger. Looked over it earlier in the day, but was not going to look over it in an elimination match for his team. They have great diversification of damage because they also have Perks and Wunder to provide more of the AD threat. So for now, Flash Wolves already feels like they're being pushed into a corner that's very difficult to get back in. We already alluded to the fact that losing vision control against this Heimerdinger comp can be so woeful for a Mordekaiser carry team, and we're very, very close to that scenario playing out.
And I also feel that for the Flash Wolves, due to their limited engage options, they need to be setting up around these objectives first, and it ties in with your vision point, but the fact that the Flash Wolves have no way to easily start a fight outside of having an objective, and the fact that they fell behind in this early game and aren't able to set up around it, means that the ways in which they come back are kind of relying on G2 to make these mistakes, relying on them to commit to a Baron and maybe finding a fight, relying on them to overextend. Otherwise, slowly, G2 will gain more and more control.
European fans should definitely be confident about the position their team is right now, but we know how quickly those scenarios can change.
Very true.
It feels like G2 control their own destiny, as all Flash Wolves can do is plonk down some control wards and hope G2 comes to them.
If we've learned anything today, though, Papa, fates turn real quick in best of ones here, especially when so much is on the line. G2, though, are trying to get things pushing through the midsection. Hyanan is doing his typical thing of hanging out in mid lane and pressuring some turrets.
But he doesn't have much to care about, just falling in with what Vedius said. He sees Mordecai as a Tom Kench. The Talia is showing, but not going to be all-inning onto Hyanan in the backline, stopwatch available, level 2 ultimate available. So he's happy to be there, monopolize solo experience and gold. G2, in the meanwhile, just claim the blue buff, just play it all standard, and there's very little Flash Wolves can do to impact this damn Heimerdinger.
Hyanan's like quietly 1v2ing this lane at this point, as we did. We'll actually return to the mid lane and again cheer on his lane mate by dinging the cowbell once more.
Pacey Time, do you remember the last time we cast Heimerdinger in an elimination game?
Do I ever?
It was 6 years ago, but damn, was that a good thing. That was Mandu, baby. Poo Mandu on the jungle Heimerdinger.
That's a throw at jungle Heimerdinger?
That was a YouTube video that got a lot of hits.
Yeah.
You can watch that one later. Let's focus on the fate of Europe and the LMS right now. But the irony is not lost on me.
No, and there's the big turret from Hyanan. This was not around last time we casted this champion, but turret damage is still good. Does chip away, and again, Hyanan can rinse repeat. Basically, if this holding pattern stays, G2 should be happy.
And see, Perkz once again looking for pressure.
TP's in, Abyssal Voyage. Perkz maybe a bit too far. Good flash over the wall. Jankos there, but here's wanted to try and play cleanup on the other end of the fight. Wadid's come over as well. As the fight looking decent, Betty is going to get chained up, but does flash the wall to safety.
A bit of a messy fight there from Perkz as he initiates before his team is ready to follow up. Fortunately, Jankos' barrel could offer the disengage, but neither team could really commit due to the awkward situation that they were in.
And the sort of scenario where snowballing in the early game allows you to spare your blushes a little bit ends up being a trade of summoners between Perkz and Betty, but they crucially get the objective, and that's the more important thing. We're able to look at the top of the screen and remind you, we already mentioned G2 being stuck at groups a couple of years in a row. Flash Wolves, for all their heroics at MSI and all that we built up around this team, they looked so comfortable coming into the day, but it's 2015 since they got out of the group stage.
And you think about how both these teams started this group stage. Flash was off to a dominant performance. G2 very quick to catch up, and many considered Afrika not being able to bounce back. But after their 3-0, it is now both these teams with so much hope in their eyes to make it further in the World Championship that I have to fight for that final spot.
Well, we're about to have something spicy come up in the Dragon Pit in 50 seconds. Infernal number 2 is ready. And again, the Mordekaiser team has not gotten a single Drake so far in G2. Well, it might be nice to get yourself an objective and deny it away from the enemy team. You're still stacking Drakes at this point as well.
I mean, G2 is just plain sailing. I think Vedius and I have to think about, you just look at the page and see CS lead for Aatrox, CS lead for Aurelius, CS lead for Heimerdinger, and map control in general. We already outlined the low engage. To me, it's just go back, buy 9 control wards, and try to make the enemy come to you, because these scenarios don't seem to be suiting Flash.
Ult missed again. Perkz, though, he's getting chased down, but he's going to have to zip back to the wave, and he's out, kind of. Mugen's here, Abyssal Voyage in. Perkz going to have to play some real theatrics to try and get out of this situation. Cannot do it, though. It's shut down by Mugen, but it's worth a mid-turret.
But they even bring in the Abyssal Voyage just for a front row seat to Perkz finally dying. Flash Wolves feel good about that, but they lose the mid lane turret, and it doesn't change the state of the map.
But look at the pings. Flash Wolves realize the situation that they're in, and with Perkz gone, one of the main gold holders of G2, Flash Wolves are just going to force the Baron.
That ward to the left of Baron, though, may give G2 the information they need to really put a stop to this play. Hyanan throwing in grenades. Here's Wadid in the mix of the fight. Hyanan just trying to poke them out of the way. And again, they're going to try and go for it here. Wadid a little too low, but they do get the pick on Hanabi. Maple trying to flank around, but now Hyanan's going to face tank for his jungler as Wunder with the World Ender still looking decent there. Oh, the knockup was almost there, but he didn't have the third. They will take down Maple. Now Wunder has to book it, but he's still safe for now. Mugen Flash Q will pick up the cap on that kill.
And Perkz just won't die. He's the biggest traitor to G2 as he's so close to killing Wadid. But G2, they actually stop the Baron, they find 2 kills, ends up being overall 2 for 2 if you count the loss of life of Perks. But for now, G2, they hold the line and Flash Wolves aren't able to get anything back.
And we finally saw that sliver of hope for Flash Wolves. Finally, G2 had to come to them in an outnumbered situation. However, it could only delay the Drake take. It still is terrain controlled by G2. So Hyanan and Jankos take down the second Infernal for G2.
Continue stacking their advantages as we watch this one again.
And the thing for Flash Wolves is, remember that Ryze isn't even in this fight yet. They have Perks as a ghost, and Wadid, he's pretty separated from the rest of his team, but Hyanan isn't untouched. The fact that Wonder can get into the thick of things is great for G2, but Mujin is sitting on the back line. Maple then arrives. The problem is, the rest of Flash Wolves have to commit to killing this turret before they can really kill the rest of G2. And then they realize that there is a very fed and strong Aatrox in our face that is just too difficult to deal with.
And Maple's really in that unenviable situation of, do I try to be another frontliner for my team that's already overloaded with those, or flank and force Hyanan to disengage? He makes the secondary choice in the end. It's a bit of a line ball as to whether it's the right call, but speaking of right calls for G2, the pressure is still on.
Ulti there from Sword Art again, but very defensive to try and save this turret. Hyanan again with the grenades, just going to keep the siege going here for G2. Gold lead still looking pretty strong. They're up about 3,500 as they're building in towards their second items for the most part. But still really yet to break this game wide open. Baron being available is always nice. G2 stacking Drakes is good as well, but game is bounced pretty precariously, Vedian.
Now, there are no TPs anywhere on the map right now, and Wonder, he could be caught out.
Realm Warp, gonna look for him. Will end up pop, tries to get out of there, pops the chain, doesn't have flash. That's gonna be a kill, you have to think. The Resurrect is there. Can he make it over the wall? He's not even gonna try as Maple able to finish that off.
And I was about to mention, one of the few things G2 can't do is walk up as a single member, because that's really all Flash Wolves are able to put together their team comp to do, is kill the one person in the front. They want to focus on a Rune Prison, the Urgot ult, and the Mordekaiser ult to make it a 6v4 fight with the Ghost. In this case, they're able to do that just too far forward from Wonder. He's been caught a couple of times today after what was such a flawless performance earlier in Worlds 2018. It doesn't change the game, but they still have to reset as Maple.
Jankos with a big play, doesn't quite get him over the wall with the cask, and the rockets don't quite reach.
Hyanan wasn't quite in range to help secure that kill. Ends up just being a flash for Flash overall, but a flashless Rise could be big for G2 in the ensuing fight. But as you said, Papa Smithy, Wonder making another big mistake like we saw earlier in the day, and Flash Wolves, they want to try and capitalize on that as much as possible, as right now they lose another turret.
There's your true zoning ult this time, Papa Smithy, and they do get the turret.
You gotta do what you gotta do, and what this gets G2 getting the inner turret is, remember how they closed out that game against Afrika. Get all the lanes pushing in, all the turrets at Baron, turn on the Baron, and kill it surprisingly quickly. They may not be mountains, but 2 Infernals are a great path to make that happen. And the longer the lanes, the deeper you can get lane vision onto the side of Flash Wolves, with the aforementioned difficulty of them walking up to the Heimerdinger comp, the more it's likely to pay dividends for G2.
Wonder is already with the TP, so is Hyanan, but of course he's busy around the mid lane, trying to bait that Baron as you mentioned. Wonder actually going to take some time to get these Krugs away. And again, G2 I think have done a great job resetting this game in general. Jankos in particular has played a much different game than the one he had to play. Yes, he was forced into some awkward situations, but full credit to Jankos for shaking it all off and playing really strong League of Legends.
Credit to Mujin as well. He's currently one of the big gold holders on the side of Flash Wolves right now, and given that he has completed the Morellonomicon, he's also one of the big damage dealers that G2 have to respect. Remember that they don't have any real frontline tanks outside of Wadid, and even then, he doesn't have that much gold. So for the side of Flash Wolves, the fact that Mujin is still strong, Betty will be a pseudo tank and that he can absorb a lot of damage with his shielding, means that Flash Wolves in these fights still have a means of coming back if they can just find the right fight against G2.
I just think at this point it is very much about sticking to their identity of having Wonder bot lane, drawing 1, drawing 2, and every few moments, Wadid is uniquely qualified to face check this blue buff area and say no control wards for you, no deep vision for you, and just keep resetting until the Baron becomes a realistic start. It doesn't feel like we're there yet, but I think G2 trying to ARAM once again or run together as a 5 plays into Flash Wolves finding a single pick. We've already outlined multiple times today that if they try to play and try to aggress onto G2, that's where Flash Wolves draft does fall apart.
And throw back to game 1 of the group stages, or the first time rather G2 met up against the Afrika Freaks. When G2 played around the Baron, they leveraged Heimerdinger's turrets to maintain aggro, slowly dish out damage, while Wonder split pushed off on a sideline. It ties back to what you were saying. We're yet to see G2 utilize this Heimer's strength when playing around this big objective.
Small difference here is that Kjarnan's actually required to push mid lane. He does it the fastest of the available champions because of the Aurelia draft, so it becomes more 3 lanes than 2. But that's a lot of darkness. There's no Nocturne. This is just a lack of information for Flash Wolves, and that's why the turrets mean this Baron buff star number 1.
And they've started it, but again, they can very easily pull off and try and turn this around. Hanabi not going to get some, but Soda is going to be the target in the front line. The Tomcat is going to get picked off here. Kjarnan able to slay the first beast. And now Wunder looking for the knockout, doesn't quite grab Batty, but he will get him with a second. Still going, finds a chance. Vanguard then disarms 3, and Perkz, he's going to dance around the backside of the fight as G2 look to really put the screws in this game. Hanabi is going to disdain out, but that's 2 kills for G2.
And G2 finally start off the Baron, bait Flash Wolves into a choke point, and find a massive fight. Wonder's going to go back to base because he knows he has the teleport, but Mujin is still alive. G2 posturing back towards the Baron, have to respect the potential of a steal.
All the big wins are going to be gotten around Baron. They're back onto it, as you mentioned, Vedius. They started off, and it doesn't look like Flash Wolves can really do anything.
Mujin, no ult, no flash, no real way to get into the pit in time. So it may just have to be Constellation Drake instead, as Maple just TPs down to try and pressure this turret and meet his team up for the objective.
And this is very, very little reward, but all they can do is take a Mountain Drake and reevaluate the game state as Flash Wolves. Feels like the early game Drakes going the way of G2 was so important to trivializing Mordekai's ability to kind of face roll over a game with those Dragon Spirits. Now the Baron is there. Now Flash Wolves are just going to have to play on the pure defensive, and walking up as this Mordekaiser comp is probably an impossibility for now.
Still going as well here. Wunder fancies a knock upon, and Mujin going to have to pop. Ulti does do so, instantly gets resurrected as Jankos does try and disengage him. Wunder also forced a flash there.
Another big mistake from Wonder, as his ultimate was just about to come up. Unfortunately, he gets it before the rest of Flash Wolves collapse, but Papa Smithy, you talked about it earlier. If they're a single target, Flash Wolves have enough crowd control and damage to just obliterate.
I just learned that Wunder likes to puff his chest out and look as intimidating as possible, but being turned on him a couple of times. Stick with what you're doing majorly here, G2. Just play out the percentages. No need to get cute. You're in a huge advantage, and this Heimerdinger is obnoxious to deal with from the side of Flash Wolves. But when it comes to true siege, they don't feel super confident, or super confident, I should say. And for now, at least, they go back to pushing out minion waves and making this a 3-lane game.
And again, Kjarnan's Heimer is comfort. Wunder maybe playing a little too overeager, and Jankos has short up a lot of what we've seen in his mistakes earlier in the tournament. But Perkz, again, he's the first to level 18. He's been styling on most of this game, apart from that one death he took isolated in the top lane. He had a great caster game last game, despite the loss to Afrika. It does not surprise me that I assume the captain of G2 is really looking to rally his team into this quarterfinal.
I gotta say, the hard counter to Mordekai is definitely Baron buff. He walks up, does 10 damage to the minions, and he's like, well, sorry guys, I tried.
Well, G2 now, they're pushing on all 3 lanes. Flash Wolves, their hopes of making it to a quarterfinal are quickly disappearing as G2 pressure towards the base.
Lane assignment here is fantastic. Nothing Mord and Tom Kench can do. Aatrox is being able to shrug off Rise damage and poke at that top inhibitor turret as well. G2 staying as a 3-man unit, and Perkz, well, everyone's staying away from him wherever possible. But the problem is, normally you'd say, okay, Ornn, blow that Ornn horn. They don't have anything like that. So incrementally, they're chipping down every inhibitor turret, and Flash Wolves not finding anything.
It's not going to take long for G2 to find themselves 10,000 gold up and one of these inhibitor turrets broken, if not multiple, perhaps even at the same time. Still 50 seconds left on this Baron. Kjarnan is peppering the front line of Flash Wolves, or at least what is of it, with rockets, and that turret's going to fall down, and G2 move in.
And this must mean so much to G2 as Perkz now trying to get collapsed onto 2 members.
He's just going to start his way out of this play. Perkz does pop it. Actually, he moves through the Urgot ulti. Can't make his way back in, but Wonder's going to try and finish off the kill. Perkz still playing around Hanabi. He's dancing through this moment. He's actually still living. He's trying to find the biggest 1v1. He will fall, but the rest of his team is playing clean up with aplomb.
And G2, they find a big fight. Both Betty and Maple are down. The Nexus towers are in their eyes. They still have the Baron buff. They are so close to making their first ever quarterfinal.
Indeed, under the turret is going to initiate onto Sorta. That's a kill. They're going to take the Nexus turret down. They grab the right-hand side. The stopwatch prop for Wonder is going to try and buy just a bit more time. Hyun and Timer is doing what he can.
Just
to
hit the
shove
Nexus,
everything
boys.
out. Hanabi pops the stone plate. G2, they're going to get another kill here as the Urgot cannot defend. And G2 on the precipice of pushing to their first quarterfinals. They put the last finishing touches on the Nexus and push themselves into the top 8.
The faces of elation on G2. Perkz has struggled for so long. 2016 he failed, 2017 he failed, and 2018, after losing Sven and Mithy, bringing in Hyun and Wadid, and it is the Heimerdinger pick that brings him to his first ever quarterfinal. He must be so proud of what he and his team have finally accomplished after all this time.
And just like we've said multiple times this tournament, they did it their way, and it took them a long, winding road. They qualified through the play-ins, as you have to see the disappointed faces of the Flash Wolves once again unable to push through the group's stage into the quarterfinals. That means that C9 and now G2 have gone through the play-ins and made it to the quarterfinals.
That's what I like to see. One NA and one EU team sneaking their way out of groups somehow. Credit though to G2. A very strong passage of League of Legends in what looked like a pretty tough group. And some crazy games settle in another EU tiebreaker, which they continue to do well in.
It was very competitive Group A. Flash Wolves had a fantastic performance. Overall, their year has been one of the best. But G2 come out on top. The crowd shows their support. And G2 Esports, once again, for the first time in the organization's history, will make the quarterfinals.
And they're definitely a team that, if you're a first seed, I'm not sure you want to face. You might say, okay, get rid of the Heimerdinger, get rid of some of the tools, and maybe they won't have more. But I have a feeling they're going to use the next couple of days to come up with a few more strategies.